360 olive oil is a popular choice for people wanting to activate their full potential. Improved sleep, faster recovery and more energy are just a few of the amazing comments received from our customers who take a spoonful a day. Make C60 oil a part of your daily routine and see what it can do for you. Activate your potential today at thec60company.com.
Now, we've had some deja vu this week. You Only Die Twice, Bin Laden, the sequel. Now You Only Die Several Times, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the alleged head of ISIS, Islamic State. This is the headline: Disposal complete. ISIS chief al-Baghdadi buried at sea like bin Laden, but photo and video proof remains classified, says Pentagon. Why do they keep burying these guys at sea? They say, oh, we don't want a grave because it become a center for a martyrdom. No, you don't want a grave so any body can be seen, because you keep lying to us. By the way, Donald Trump's announcement of what he claimed to be the death of this Baghdadi, I mean, this may be one that's turns out to be true, who knows, but there's no evidence that it is so far. And I say turns out to be true because Baghdadi has been alleged to have been killed so many times, it's unbelievable. So when they come out and say they've done it again, we should be, to say the least, questioning of what we're told. And this announcement by Trump that Baghdadi was dead was absolutely grotesque, actually, in my view. Glorying in what happened instead of just saying, he's no longer here to do what we say he does. But no, it was horrible listening to it. You may have seen it. Does this Baghdadi, as the person that he is supposed to be, even exist? Is he really the leader of ISIS? ISIS being, of course, a proxy army for the United States, so how do you square that one? Anyway, this is the story. The US got rid of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's body mere hours after a swift DNA test confirmed the terrorist's identity, so they tell us. Pentagon officials said, adding that all evidence of the raid and his burial at sea remains classified, which of course is what they said about bin Laden. Bin Laden was reported by Arabic media sources in 2001 to have died from kidney failure and other complications. And from the period he's supposed to have died onwards, there is no credible footage of bin Laden. There's videos that were clearly manipulated and tampered with and claimed to be what they weren't. Oh yes, but not verifiable evidence that he existed after the time when those Arab media sources were saying he died. And then suddenly, of course, years and years later, Obama announces, just like Trump did this week, that Navy SEALs have stormed his compound after they found him, it is claimed, and killed him. Which, if the Arabic sources are true, means they killed him again. And in the trigger, in a chapter called Bin Laden Did It in quotes, by the way, the background to that is outlined. the way that he was reported to have died twice. And now this Baghdadi has been reported killed over and over in this whole period of ISIS, and now he's died again. So we'll see where that leads. Whether they do produce evidence to show that actually this time they're telling the truth, we will see. But given the record of authorities of every kind in not telling the truth, we should be very, very skeptical until that proof is produced. And talking of which, what better example of blatant lies, of a sip of tea, than the story of Jeffrey Epstein, which has moved on a little bit this week, where a well-known American pathologist called Michael Barden has said that Epstein's death was murder, not suicide. I'll come to that in a second. But, I mean, why wouldn't he say that when you put the evidence together? Epstein was running a Mossad CIA blackmail operation against influential people so that they would be compromised and have to do what the CIA Mossad agenda demands that they do. And he was in a Manhattan jail awaiting trial, awaiting appearances in court to be cross-examined, etc., and witnesses to be put in the witness box to publicly tell what they know. That is the worst nightmare of the blackmail operation run by the CIA and Mossad. And so in some form he had to disappear so that that court case didn't happen. And then you look at the sequence of events. He was said to have tried to commit suicide in his cell. He said at the time, actually, someone tried to kill me. He was then put on suicide watch to make sure he couldn't do it again. Another prisoner is put in his cell. The suicide watch is then removed for no reason whatsoever. Well, the reason was to allow what happened to happen. So he's no longer under the surveillance level that a suicide watch would mean. Then this other prisoner is put in the cell with him, but this other prisoner is then taken away as well. So here we have someone who's supposed to be in danger of committing suicide. He doesn't have anyone in the cell with him, and he's not under suicide watch surveillance. Then the guards who's supposed to have kept an eye on him, not at suicide watch level, but kept an eye on him regularly, they fall asleep at the same time. And the next morning he's found dead in the cell, and the cameras that should have been recording what happened in the corridor outside the cell all night are not working. Now, of course, this is the repeating story. The cameras, of course, are vital to this whole surveillance grid that's being imposed, but they're very, very, very bad when the death cult cabal wants to do something that the cameras would catch. And that's why, again and again, you find at the critical moment, these cameras that work for people, other people, don't work in those circumstances, whether it's Princess Diana's death in Paris, or the Brazilian electrician who was shot 7 times in the head by police as the police held him down in a tube station. All these things, there's a long list of them now, where just by coincidence the cameras weren't working at that time. So clearly, when you put all that together, the idea that Epstein killed himself is a joke. But of course, what's happened until this guy came out this week, this former New York chief medical officer, with what he said about Epstein was murdered, the media basically, if you look at it, just forgot about it. The alternative media could keep running with it, but the mainstream media just ignore the Epstein story now. Move along now, nothing to see here, which is another red flag to put together with all the others I've just described. So this is what Michael Barden said this week, New York City's former chief medical examiner. He insisted that Epstein's death was a homicide. He was hired by the pedophile's family to observe his autopsy after Epstein was found hanged in his federal lockup in Manhattan in August. And he told Fox News this week, Barden, I think that the evidence points towards homicide rather than suicide. He said there were signs of unusual activity from day one of the autopsy, saying broken bones were very unusual of suicide and more indicative of homicide strangulation. Hanging does not cause these broken bones, he said, homicide does. He also pointed to the supposed total breakdown in security around the cells, saying it would be extremely unlikely that two guards would fall asleep while video cameras were not working. This is bizarre, he said. It deserves investigation. And it's because it deserves investigation that it's not being investigated. But good on him for keeping the story in the public eye, because the media just want it to go away now, because the job's been done of removing Epstein from the dock. Another story, same theme, completely different subject. The theme being, you can't believe a word they say, and that is this evidence that's emerging that this organization called the OPCW, that's supposed to oversee and police chemical weapons use, has actually been spinning the facts over a alleged chemical attack in Syria, in Douma, in April 2018, to make the story appear to support the official narrative of what happened, i.e. Assad did it, when actually the evidence says something very different. Of course, the alternative media has been saying clearly didn't happen like that, and it clearly wasn't done by Assad from the start. But now the mainstream media headline captures the story. Media silent as Nobel Prize winning OPCW found fixing its own findings on Syria. And this is now becoming, of course, a red flag in itself, Nobel Prize winning. Because if you get the Nobel Prize, then the question is, what have you done to serve the elite to get the Nobel Prize? People who would deserve it don't get it. And here's an organization serving the interests of the system, not least in America, by just coming to conclusions that support the American version of things when the evidence says otherwise, winning a Nobel Prize. Dozens of people in that Douma attack were said to have died in a suspected chemical attack in the eastern suburb of the capital, Damascus. The United States and many European countries immediately identified Assad as being responsible for the attacks and responded with violence of their own, starting a bombing campaign against his Assad forces. Yet new evidence leaked from whistleblowers suggests that not only is the Western story on shaky ground, i.e. it's not true, but the report into the incident from this Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, deliberately suppressed evidence and testimony that contradicted the US narrative. The fact-finding mission by this organization issued a report on the alleged attack, and while far from conclusive or damning, refused to even speculate on who was responsible for the attacks, it did suggest that it was likely a chlorine attack carried out by dropping gas canisters from the air. Well, why that's significant, of course, is that only Assad in that situation had the air power to drop them from the air. So all they were saying, in effect, is Assad did it without saying it, and it supported the official narrative. But this fact-finding conclusion about the chlorine drop from the air seems to contradict its interim findings that stated that no organophosphorus nerve agents or their degradation products were detected, either in the environmental samples or in plasma samples from the alleged casualties. Nevertheless, some insinuated that the new report implicated government forces, the only groups likely to possess both the chemicals and the helicopters necessary to carry out such an attack. So here we have, and whistleblowers have come out and provided evidence for it, an organization that's been spinning its findings to, at the very least, not contradict the American made-up narrative. And the media, as with Epstein, go silent on these revelations. It's amazing, when you watch the news today, every day, as I do, both the mainstream and alternative, that you see the alternative media producing evidence background and seeking the truth with evidence that is in the public arena, and then you see the same stories on the same subjects reported by the mainstream media, and this evidence that contradicts the official story is not mentioned. And they call themselves journalists, which is kind of hilarious, to say the least.